Hey guys, I'm Props, and today I'm going to show you how I made a dragonbone sword from the video game Skyrim. The first thing you're going to want to do is cut out the profile shape of the blade. So this is just the flat edge of the blade, not including the fuller. And I just cut this out 3 times, and then for the middle piece I went through and cut out a slot out of that so that I could glue in a wooden dowel to help support the blade so it doesn't wobble. You can get a flat version of this and print this out, just getting a reference image and printing that out to full scale. I then went through along the edge of the blade and applied some masking tape, just pushing it flat so that it helps create kind of a edge on the blade. It's not like a perfect edge, mine was a little crooked, but it just makes it look better than flat cardboard. And then I went through and made the hilt, just cutting that out of some cardboard. I did end up cutting off the hilt and the pommel so that I could wrap it and sand it separately, so it was just easier for me. I cut the hilt out I think 5 times just to give it some thickness, and then I glued all those together, leaving a hole so that I could put a wooden dowel through the middle of it and connect it to the blade. I also cut out some details for the crossguard, which I glued on as well. And then I went through and glued together the crossguard, putting in the wooden dowels that I said I left place for earlier, and then I glued that onto the blade, just gluing the dowel through it. I then glued some thin cardboard along the edge of the hilt just to fill in some of the gaps that I made. I ended up going through and wrapping the whole handle and hilt and crossguard in some masking tape like I did the blade, just to fill in some of the seams that I had left and to give it kind of like a hammered metal texture, which you'll see once I applied and sand down the plaster. I also made the pommel part, just getting a cardboard tube and then wrapping that in some packing tape, and this just created a thicker rounded pommel part than what I would have gotten if I had just like layered some cardboard. It also was a little bit stronger than normal, just because the packing tape helped reinforce it a little bit. I also glued on some small cardboard details that I cut out onto the crossguard just to give it the slight layered effect that it has in the game. And then I went through and glued on the fuller, which I cut out a thin cardboard as well. And then I went through and applied some plaster over the whole blade, just splotching it with a paintbrush over the whole thing to cover up the layer lines that the packaging tape left on it. And then I went through and sanded the whole thing using a small file that I had, and I just got this really rough, I mean it doesn't need to be good looking at all. And then I went through and painted it a gloss black just to help me see flaws and sand it. And then I went through and applied some hot glue to give it the rivet looks that it has on it, and I went through and painted that with some chrome spray paint. This is just Rust-Oleum. And then I went through and masked off the blade and painted the blade an ebony white color, like the bone that it is. Then I went through and applied some black and brown washes over the whole blade, making sure just to do primarily brown washes on the bone to give it kind of a rawhide look to it. I also did a yellow wash over the blade just to give it kind of a more worn look to it, like most bone does. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. The metal, I think it looks pretty realistic, and the bone, it is a little redder than I would think it would be in the game, but I think it's pretty good. I mean, it looks like bone from most angles. I'm really happy with how this thing turned out. I mean, it's no like practice sword or anything, but it's definitely a good display piece. If you guys don't mind supporting me through Patreon so that I can continue to make decent quality videos and be able to make pretty good props. I mean, I do put a lot of time and effort into making these, so it'd be great if I could get some money making those. If you guys don't mind liking and subscribing, please do. Let me know if you guys have any builds or anything you guys want me to make, and I'll see if I can't make them. Thank you guys for watching again. See ya.